My name is Bill Forte. I'm your Inspector of Buildings. Welcome to Building Department 101. These series are designed to help you be informed about your community and what your requirements are for the building department and for the property that you own. Today we're going to be discussing certain things about how to pull building permits, how to obtain them, how to apply for them, and I hope that this show will be informative. Many times I get questions regarding that building permits are not that easy to obtain. A lot of times there's confusion at the building department, especially when certain requirements are not clear. And so I wanted to take this segment to try and clear up some of that confusion and try to give some guidance on what the requirements are for different types of construction. So we're going to go right into it here. Some of the things that we'll be viewing today will be commercial projects, so that'll be anything other than a 1 and 2 family. Residential projects, which is most of you watching today will probably be interested in, is what do I do on a residential project, a 1 and 2 family home. So that'll be some good information for people. What the application requirements are for any particular type of project, they always vary in different requirements for different types of construction activity. So we're going to try and get some of that clarified today. Electrical, plumbing, and gas permits, these are the types of things that are extremely important to know about, especially from a building safety standpoint. We want to make sure that people understand what the codes are and what the laws are in those requirements. What an ordinary repair is, that's always a really kind of a broad topic, and we're going to try to bring some clarity to that for you today, as well as work exempt from permits. Ordinary repairs are not always, don't always require a building permit. In addition to that, we will be looking at required inspections, certificate of occupancy, fees, penalties and violations, which is an important one, and zoning, ZBA setback requirements, and OLOT opinions. To go right into it, let's look at commercial building permit requirements first. These things may not concern most homeowners, but if you do own a commercial business and you're considering opening up a business here in the city, you may want to consider really having a good look at this segment here. So the building code requires that construction control affidavits are a requirement for buildings greater than 35,000 cubic feet. So if you're in a commercial space and you're in part of a larger building, but you're still in this one little space, that 35,000 cubic feet includes the entire volume of the building that your business is in. So you may be opening up a little store at, say, 700 or 800 square feet, but because there are several different tenants attached to that, then it may require construction control, especially if you're getting into alterations of the building of any sort. We don't necessarily have to have those requirements in place if it's just an occupation of a different store with a few minor changes that may not require construction control. But any significant alteration to a commercial building greater than 35,000 cubic feet, a design professional would be required. So that's area times height. That would give you your cubic foot. So just something to keep in mind. It's cubic feet, not square feet. You want to make sure that you fill out the application completely. In our commercial building permit application, there are several requirements for design professionals and engineers to sign the actual application. This may not be the case in some other cities and towns, but here in the city of Waltham we do require it, so that it needs an authentic application from the design professional who's doing the work inside the building permit application. So always something to consider. Infiltration and inflow application, sewer fees for not only for commercial projects but for residential as well. This is a big source of confusion for a lot of people. An I&I, which is called an infiltration and inflow mitigation, basically what that is there's a consent order from the Department of Environmental Protection that requires the city to repair all of the leaking water that goes into the sewer system. So infiltration and inflow is actually fresh water underground that actually flows into sewer pipes. And what that does, that creates the sewer system and the cleaning of the sewer to be at a much higher cost. When you put clean water into a sewer system, you're actually increasing the cost of what it takes to treat that sewer and that refuse. What's required is that these things get looked at from a registered professional engineer who can do these types of calculations. So if you're going to occupy a space where before it was, say, storage, and now you're going to turn it into a store or a restaurant or some other type of use, those fees are basically, they increase due to the fact that your usage is increased. So when your usage increases, so do the mitigation fees. And I believe that you'll pay more probably in your water and sewer bill, but up front from that, there is an additional mitigation fee that basically that money goes into a separate account, and it's used to repair all the sewer lines in and around the city. So that is a separate approval that's a requirement of the building permit because it's a requirement of the city. So so before you can submit a building permit, those fees have to be calculated, and that water flow has to be calculated. So we just want to make sure that people know before you apply for a building permit, you must go to the Consolidated Public Works Department, get what's called an I&I application, and then have a professional engineer do the calculations for you prior to applying for a building permit. That will help to expedite your building permit application. Okay. Stamp plans by an architect or other professionals. If an architect designs a plan, he's the one who has to stamp it. It's a work product, and under the building code, if a design professional does a design, then he has to stamp it. So if it's done by an architect, it has to be stamped by an architect. Maybe not so much in residential, but definitely in commercial. It has to be basically verified by signature and seal. So I always want to make sure that your plans are always stamped, and that's every page as well. Okay. Insurance affidavits. Not only is there what's called an insurance affidavit from the workers' comp. Basically, it's a state form that a contractor or a homeowner will fill out. Basically, you have to check what you are applying for, the type of work that it is, and the address. And along with that will be accompanied an insurance certificate. If you're a homeowner performing your own work, you still need to fill out this insurance affidavit. It's a requirement under state law, but you may not have to insure people for workers' comp at your house if you're the one who's doing the work. So you might be exempt from that. Construction supervisor's license. On any commercial project, it's a requirement to have what's called a Massachusetts licensed construction supervisor. This is a person who's competent in the ability to be able to perform construction on your home or on your building, and this is a requirement for most projects in and around the city, whether it's residential or commercial. You want to make sure that your professionals are licensed not only as construction supervisors, but again, if it's a homeowner, and I'll get into that on the next slide, if it's a homeowner, then that person also has to have what's called a home improvement contractor registration. So a construction supervisor is the person who performs the work, who's licensed and recognized by the state to be able to perform construction. And it doesn't matter on what size project. I know that you've seen some of the bigger projects out on 128. Those projects have design professionals and registered professional engineers, but they also have licensed construction supervisors who actually run all the construction activity on site. Okay, so just something to consider, that you want to make sure that someone has an updated license and that it's current. There is zoning and parking review for businesses that are basically going from, say it's never been open to the public before and it's a warehouse, and because it's allowed in a commercial zone, now you may have to provide adequate off-street parking for those businesses. That's something that before you buy a business or you make a lease for a business, you want to make sure that there is no parking requirement. Again, if you're on Moody Street, I don't believe that there is, but certain streets and certain zones, you are required to have what's called off-street parking requirements, and the amount of square footage for your business usually determines how much you need for that particular size business or the type of business. There are several different types of classifications for business. You want to make sure that prior to you making an agreement with a building owner, or before you make an agreement with a tenant, you want to make sure that your parking requirements are satisfactory and that they can be met. There's nothing worse than signing a lease in which you can't fix the building up the way you want or be able to provide parking for the type of business that you want. You always want to check with the building department first to make sure that that business use is legal in that zone prior to any kind of private contract you may sign. So just something to consider. Residential permits. This is something that all of you might want to tune into, because this is where a lot of the confusion takes place with residential permits. Roofing and siding, permits are required for roofing and siding. You always want to make sure that you get them. We don't necessarily go up and inspect the roof after it's done. Roofing permits more or less are for that you want to make sure that the contractor is insured, and that that they're following all the requirements for the type of roofing that they're putting on. We basically glance at it to make sure that it meets all the manufacturer's specifications, that it's installed properly, and of course the most important thing is that it doesn't leak. Siding, the same thing. You need a building permit to remove siding or to install siding. That also includes if you're doing an asbestos removal from a building. If you're removing asbestos siding and you're having a company do it, a professional company, that company will also need a building permit or a demolition permit, a partial demolition permit to remove siding from a building. So I always want to make sure that you have permits. In this city, at least I believe it's statewide, when you go to do vinyl siding on a house, you have to remove the meter socket from the house and reapply it to the new siding surface that's there. That would also require an electrical permit. You want to make sure, if you're a siding contractor or a homeowner, that you don't attempt to do that on your own. It would be extremely dangerous if a screw fell onto the live part of the box while you were trying to remove and replace it. So it's very important to make sure that you have an electrician do that professionally. Okay. Decks and covered porches. Now, this is something that people, I would say that most homeowners like to build their own deck. If they're going to do something on their own, a deck is usually one of those things that a homeowner might attempt on his own. And I would certainly encourage you to tell you that, yeah, it's probably a good thing for you to try. But there are certain requirements for fastening and for bolting onto the house. A lot of times you'll see that you'll see porches where there'll be too many people on a porch and it'll collapse and people will get injured or killed. Very, very important that decks are done properly. There are certain fastening requirements, certain footing size requirements, and certain wind shear requirements for mechanical connectors on a deck. I would recommend that if you're going to have this done, you have it done by a professional. A deck doesn't seem like a dangerous thing, and usually it's something that most people think, well, it's on the outside of the house, it's not a big deal, but it really is. Decks, it's very important that decks are fastened properly and that they're constructed properly. So you want to make sure, of course, a permit is required for these things. Even to repair a deck substantially, you are going to need a building permit. If you're replacing one or two floorboards on a deck, it's probably not required. But if you're pulling off a set of stairs and replacing them, and you're putting on new railings and so forth, these things do require building permits under the state building code. So you want to make sure that you have a permit in place. A lot of times people will go to extend a deck in an area where, well, I'm just adding 2 feet to it. Well, you want to make sure that you have a building permit so that we can make sure that that the deck that you're putting on is going to fit in the required setback area of the property that you're building. So you can project an uncovered porch into a setback for a certain size, for a certain amount of space, but the reason why it's important to have a building permit for a deck is that there may come a time when if you expand in there, first of all, it's illegal to not have a building permit, but at the same time you could end up having to take that deck out if it's non-complying. So you just want to make sure that you have a building permit in place. You find out what size deck you can build, how far you can go out with it, and if you can cover it or not, because there's 2 different requirements. A porch roof sometime may not be allowed into the setback. If it's in the required setback, you may not be able to cover it. So again, you always want to come and talk to our building department, or if you're looking at this video from another city or town, you may want to consider speaking to that building inspector in that city and town. They'll always give you the right advice, and you'll always know where you stand with that. It's better to do it legally than to be caught without a permit and to do it illegally. Additions and accessory buildings require a plot plan as well as a deck or a structure. Any structures that are located on the property become public record. So we need to have, the only way to have an accurate record of what is on the property is a required plot plan. And that can only be done by a registered professional land surveyor. Okay, so you always want to make sure that when you're when you're proposing a project on your property, you want to make sure that you've met that requirement by hiring a registered land surveyor, a professional land surveyor to prepare you a plan for your proposed project, along with anything that exists on the property as it is right now. Okay. Homeowner exemption. Now, the state law does allow for homeowners to perform work on their own houses. The requirements are that you have to be a live-in resident, so you can't own a two-family and do your own work on a two-family that you don't live in. That'd be the first thing. On any one and two family, if you live at the home and you are the homeowner and you're going to perform the work yourself, then the state code does allow for homeowners to perform their own work. Again, it's not recommended if you don't really know everything you need to know about the particular project that you're doing. Some projects don't require a building permit, but again, it's always good to check with your local building official to make sure that the activity that you're performing does not require a building code issued building permit. Okay. New homes, additions, these are the things that a lot of times people get confused with. Most lots in the city of Waltham are considered non-conforming. Houses were built at the time when certain zoning dimensions were allowed, now that these dimensions have changed, as long as it was built legally conforming at the time, it is legal, but it's also non-conforming. So that means it doesn't meet the requirements of today's setbacks or today's dimensional requirements. So what we do is we actually examine the history of the lot. It's called an old lot opinion. What we do is we determine if that lot is indeed non-conforming, and if it is, then you're allowed certain liberties as far as setbacks and for height and dimensions. So if you have an old lot, let's just say you have an old house on it, you want to build a new house, we would do an old lot opinion to determine how big of a house you can have, what your setback requirements are. And there are actually special requirements for setbacks for lots that are non-conforming. It's in the zoning ordinance in section 4, and you can read all about that if you care to. But what the requirements are for this type of thing is basically what we do is we do a title search, and we check for contiguous ownership from the time before 1942 until after 1953 to make sure the lots haven't been divided up. It's kind of a complex study, and that's something that you always want to come to the building department for, and we'll give you information on what you need for that type of review. I'll go over that a little bit more. For the application, you want to make sure the application is filled out and signed by the owner and the professionals. Again, this is for residential. You want to just make sure that everything is filled out completely. Map, lot, and block are not necessary. Just the proper property address will be sufficient. I know that there is that on there, but that's not necessarily a requirement. You want to make sure that you have a copy of the contractor who's working for you, a copy of their CSL license and their home improvement contractor. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this because a lot of times people will get into problems with a contractor who comes in and does work. The first thing about a contractor that comes in to do work or proposes to do work on your home, you want to make sure that you have a contract in writing. I can't express this enough, is that to be a contractor, you need a contract. If someone doesn't want to give you anything in writing, it's probably not a good idea to be involved with that person, because it is a requirement that if you're a home improvement contractor, you must have a contract, and it requires that a certain amount of information, a certain type of information be on that contract. So you want to make sure that your contracts are all in writing, that you've signed and dated it, and that you have a copy of that original contract that you agree on. Without it, I can't tell you how many times I've been asked to step in on a private contractual obligation and I have no authority to. The Home Improvement Contractor Program is regulated by the Department of Consumer Affairs. It used to be that the Building Board of Regulations and Standards used to regulate construction activity within the HIC program, and now the Consumer Affairs Division handles that. So we have no authority to be involved with this, except for the fact that we have to check and make sure that the license is present at the time we issue a building permit. So again, there are certain exemptions for homeowners. If you want to do the work yourself and you want to take the risk, certainly you have the right to do that, but it's never recommended that you go with an unlicensed contractor or someone who can do it for cheaper, because cheaper is never better, at least in my experience. Again, workers' comp affidavit, proof of insurance, and a waste debris form is also required. A waste debris form is basically just a form that states where the job is, where the debris is going. That's a Massachusetts state law under DEP, and that's Department of Environmental Protection, and they need to know where the waste is going. So usually it's the facility at which the waste will be dumped. So if it's a dumpster company, that would be where you would say the location of the facility is. Okay. You're going to need 2 sets of stamp plans with fire department review. So if it's a residential project and you're adding a bedroom, it's going to require hardwired smoke detectors. Those types of things need to be stamped by the fire department. Whether it's commercial or residential, if you're adding anything substantially to a residential home, even if you're proposing a bedroom in an existing space in a basement, that's going to require fire department review. We want to see that plan stamped before you submit it to the building department for a building permit. Okay. Certified plot plan showing the existing and proposed structures. Again, this is for anything that you're going to add to the property that doesn't exist right now. That could be a shed, that could be a porch, that could be any other type of structure, a garage, an addition, anything like that. So any proposed construction on a single lot will require a professional land surveyor to provide you with a certified plot plan showing the proposed and existing conditions. Okay. Construction control affidavits and technical information. You want to make sure that if you're building more than a 2-family, you want to make sure that you have these documents in place prior to the submittal of the application, or it won't be accepted at the counter. Plumbing, gas, and electrical permits. Only a licensed plumber can perform plumbing work on your home. It's a big myth that you can do your own plumbing if you own your own single-family home. It is illegal for anyone to touch plumbing in their home. The only thing you can do, to my knowledge, as far as I know, under the plumbing code, is you can repair a toilet tank only. That's the only thing I think that's allowed for a homeowner to perform plumbing in their home. Of course, nobody really thinks about it putting in a faucet's not a big deal. But these things are really not allowed without a plumbing permit and without a licensed plumber. The electrical work in your home should be done by a licensed electrician. The code does allow for a homeowner to do his own electrical work, provided that it meets the electrical code, that a permit is pulled, and that it's been inspected. It's never recommended to do your own electrical work. Electrical work is not a hobby. It requires the level of professionalism that only an electrician can provide. It's never a good idea to do electrical work in your home, but again, you're allowed to do that, and no one's going to stop you, provided that you have the proper permits in place. Okay? You never ever want to touch gas work in your home. It's never legal for you to connect or disconnect a stove or any kind of gas appliance in your home. Again, this is something you want to leave to a professional. Always call a licensed plumber or a licensed gas fitter to come and perform work on your gas equipment in your home. This is real serious stuff. This is a lot of times when you see an explosion in a house, 9 times out of 10, it's from a gas line that's either leaked or breached or broken. A lot of times, if people want to do their own gas work, it's never a good idea. So you always want to hire a professional to do those types of things. Rough inspections and final inspections are requirements for gas, electrical, and plumbing permits. So along with a building inspection, rough inspection, rough gas, and rough electrical are also required. Some of the ordinary repairs that may not require a building permit are replacement of any portion of a stair system. So if you're going to replace a stair tread because it's broken, that's okay. But when you're replacing an entire set of stairs or an entire set of stringers, now you've actually changed the height of those. Those have to be inspected to make sure that your height requirements, that your riser requirements have been met. So if you're replacing a whole set of stairs, that requires a building permit. But any portion of that may not require it. So if you're going to replace treads, provided that you're not going to cut new stringers, the stringer is that little thing that looks like this, you may not need a building permit. You want to make sure that if you're going to replace any portion of it, again, you can always check with your local building inspector. Okay, so you just want to make sure that you're always checking with your building official to make sure you have the proper guidance. Repair of a roof less than 100 square feet. That's something that, you know, if you're only repairing a portion of the roof, then that's okay. You probably don't need a permit for that. Painting, papering, cabinets, and floors. These are all exemptions that you can find in the building code. Pools less than 24 inches deep do not require a building permit. Anything more than that, you should have a building permit in place. Other exemptions that are required to have a building permit under zoning. So a shed may not require a building code permit, but it does require that you have a permit under the zoning ordinance because it's a structure and it is considered something that needs a permit. So, required inspections, soil conditions, inspections, footing. We're going to be looking at the footings. We're going to be looking at soil conditions. That's a required inspection. This is on residential mostly. Seal coating and damp proofing of the foundation. A foundation as-built, which is basically done again by a professional land surveyor. You want to make sure that you have a plan that's showing where the foundation has been placed prior to framing. A rough plumbing, gas, and electrical inspection is required, and a rough frame inspection is required right after that. Your insulation needs to be inspected, so that's a separate inspection. The finished gas, electrical, and plumbing, final building inspection, and final as-built conditions plan, again, done by a registered land surveyor, is a requirement prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, which is the next thing here. Buildings are required to have a certificate of occupancy from my office prior to moving in. So we want to make sure that you have that certificate prior to the, you moving in furniture, whatever you might be doing, occupying a building and so forth, because we want to make sure that the building is safe. So you always want to make sure that you have that certificate in place, okay? And again, this is the code that requires, this is the local zoning code that requires that every building that's used and occupied needs to be applied to my office for a certificate of occupancy. You want to make sure that you have that, whether it's a residential home or a business or a brand new building. Okay. Your building permit fees, $12 per thousand residential. For residential projects, it's $12. Commercial building permit fees are $22 per $1,000 of construction cost. And signs have their own fees depending on what size they are and the square footage. Zoning violations and penalties under zoning in the building code. Under zoning, it could be up to $300 per day. So if you construct something and it continues to be in violation, you could be subject to fines. So you want to make sure, again, that you have the proper permits prior to construction of anything, whether it be a shed or a garage or a porch. You want to make sure that you have the proper permits in place. Under the building code, which is 780 CMR, you could be fined up to $1,000 per day. This would be more for commercial properties if you occupy a building without a certificate of occupancy, if you perform commercial construction work, especially if you're a licensed construction supervisor, you could be exposed to those kinds of fines. That's why it's always a good idea to have a permit in place. That doesn't mean we'll always do it, but if the violations are egregious enough, we want to make sure that you know that you could be subject to fines. So, and there are consequences other than money. This is a big thing too. You want to make sure that whenever you're doing a project, you want to have the benefit of a certified building inspector look at these projects. Again, this is all for safety reasons. We want to make sure that people are safe and that they are that all the work that's performed in a building is adequate for fire and life safety and for plumbing, electrical, and gas code, and for building code. We take building safety very seriously, and we just want to make sure that everybody is safe. So it's very important to know that these are, these are important things. Basically these are the requirements for old lot opinions, something that you want to make sure that you do prior to drawing up plans for an addition or a new home, and you certainly can find this on our website. I'm going to post this on our website. Something always to, just final note, you always want to check with your building inspector again. Information is free. We're always available to answer any questions, and we would much rather take the time to answer your questions prior to you going ahead and just doing things without our knowledge. so that we can make sure that your project comes out right and that you plan for it, and that that you don't have any issues while the project is going on. So we want you to be safe, and we want to make sure that that we uphold the laws of the city. And just for a final thought, never perform work without a building permit. Again, always check with your local inspector to make sure that the work you're doing either requires a permit or it doesn't. So that's it for this show, and I hope that we've been informative, and we hope that we can certainly help you to plan any of your future projects, and you can always come to our department. It's located at 119 School Street in Waltham, Mass. Thank you for listening.